if you will, just go over that part of the report, because that's just kind of interesting. The 15 percenters.
Yeah, the idea of the 15 percenters is simply that a meme is going to be out and about relative to yet another way to divide and conquer. So the powers that be are going to attempt to use the idea that people are special by way of containing alien DNA in their own, or extraterrestrial, however we want to think about it, within their own DNA, and that'll make them special. And basically, it's, as I say, it's just yet another way of them attempting to divide and conquer.
Yeah,
it's an updating, if you will, of the whole idea of rule by special bloodline.
You know what? I'm pretty tired of that. I don't know about
it gets very old very quick. Yeah, especially since these people are so stupid.
To be sure. I mean, really, sincerely. Okay, so the next thing is the moon bombings. Let's talk about that. Does that fit into any of your reports anywhere?
Sure. It was actually really spooky because we'd seen, sometimes when you're looking at this data and you come up with a particular interpretation, you say, you're writing it all down, you're in the midst of all of these thousands of various different little subsets, and you're looking at it, and you write it all down, and you make notes, and so on. And later on, you come back and you sort of look at it with your conscious mind, and you say, now, wait a second, what did I write there? Because it didn't make any sense at all. How could such a thing occur? And a couple of years back, we had one of these instances which said that sometime in the middle of the summer of 2009 would be the first occurrence of language that ultimately becomes alien wars. And you have to understand that the way we look at things, there's various different archetypes. So we have this large archetype over here with about 40 or 50,000 words in it called aliens. And then we have another archetype over here of war with about 800,000 word combinations in it. And so the idea is basically that we're going to get some sort of large combination between the two, large set between the two that will dominate things in 2011. And we thought, well, this is pretty silly. What kind of language would precipitate alien wars and show up in 2009? And then, sure enough, in the summer, they announced that, Earth is going to take the radical step of attacking the moon and bombing it. We do that very well, so the United States is going to take the lead, and NASA was going to go and bomb the moon for us. Those evil Selenites must be doing something we didn't like. and so we're going to take it out on them with a bombing campaign. Bomb them back into the lunar Stone Age. Anyway, though, what was interesting for us, actually rather shocking, was to see the language of warfare in the sense of words around bombing and so forth, and the idea of interplanetary actually appear in the mainstream press. The reason that it was shocking, because these early precursors, if they don't show up, then it may mean that we've really misinterpreted the larger set that backs them up. On the other hand, the reverse is also true. When these early things show up, it gives us a whole lot more confidence in the larger archetypes appearing in a much more concrete form over time. So we're a whole lot more confident now that alien wars are, in fact, going to be dominating all of our thoughts in 2011 in a way that we can't really conceive of at the moment, simply because NASA did that announcement and then went on to attack the evil Selenites.
Yeah, and then now you notice they changed the premise of why they were doing it. Now it's for water. They're going to go up there and bomb for water. They're going to try to find water underneath the surface. I don't know. The whole thing is just really weird. I don't know if you got caught up listening to that whole scenario when they were supposedly, on their way to bomb the moon, and the audio and the video of all that.
No, I haven't actually seen any of the details. I've been out doing other things, so.
Yeah, well, you're probably lucky that you did. There's a lot of real quirky things in there. It's not right, so I'm even kind of wondering if there's not going to be a second one happening here, obviously, because it didn't do what they wanted it to do, and I'm wondering if there's going to be a second one here next month, in the month of November, and would there be anything in your language, in your reports, that would maybe point to that direction?
Well, I don't know specifically about the bombing of the moon again, but it wouldn't surprise me that there would be some level of response to it, not necessarily from the Selenites throwing something back at it, but down here on the planet, and it may be a scenario whereby, for instance, it turns out that NASA was trying to destroy some evidence that they didn't want the Indian lunar observer craft to see, right?
No.
And they missed or something.
No, you have to be wrong about that.
yeah, something along those lines, right? That kind of a scenario could arise, and that would fit what we've got for November. November is going to be a very interesting month relative to the whole what we can think of as disclosure with a large D.
Okay.
Because the Alien Wars meme really took off relative to November. It took off in terms of its emotional, what we think of as the sums of the emotional duration and impact. That was really the beginning of the alien component of this interplanetary warfare thing starting to show up. So it wouldn't surprise me, for instance, to find that there's a bunch of discussion about the bombing that occurs in November, along with other things relative to the alien war meme in a larger sense. And that would include our predicted release somewhere, some fundamental physics that will end up supplying the physics discovery that will end up supplying the scientific platform for the new electrics in about 5 years from now.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it should be, a good time to look at science magazines and scan the internet for this kind of stuff, because there's going to be some kind of, it'll probably come from quantum or scalar effects, torsion field somewhere in that area, I would imagine.
Okay. So what we're looking at, it seems like the last few months here of 2009 might prove to be quite busy for everyone.
Chock-a-block full.
Yeah, we're talking about financial stuff. Let's not forget the flu thing, the chemtrail stuff, the alien wars. My goodness.
Yes, I know. It's like,
is our plate
please,
full?
I want a vacation. Yeah.
I know. Is our plate full or what?
Yeah, and that's just the start. The real chaos comes in when all that whole mess is stirred together in 2010. We're going to have the refuseniks that are going to start this, in fact, have started all around the country and all around the world. We have instances here in the Northwest and Washington State where local news is talking about basically trying to ridicule or shame them into it, about local health workers that wouldn't take the vaccine. And so we're seeing this refusenik meme start to show up. That'll be huge in 2010. But basically, you're sort of correct. I think the rest of this year, until the end of December, will provide us with the mise en place, all the little prepared bits and pieces that are going to go into our stew for next year. So all the themes we see develop between now and say, the end of December, we can look forward to expand and become much larger over 2010, especially driven by the economic problems. The shock of the dollar collapse as a global reserve is going to impact the U.S. in a rather sudden and shocking way, because our just-in-time supply system, already stressed, is going to be severely stressed, and a lot of our data pointed to very atypical reports of food riots over the course of winter. And usually, people in the Northern Hemisphere are not known for rioting or having revolution much in the wintertime.
No, but it's been pretty interesting, some conversations that have been taking place over the past, literally just the past few weeks, about people's behavior in inclement weather and what they're doing. And all of my opinion is that all of this stuff that we're just being force-fed, whether it be in the news or whatever, it's just so negative, and it's just so overwhelming that people are in this fear-based state of being. So everything then becomes extraordinarily pronounced or accentuated, and people really are kind of like freaking out over the littlest things they wouldn't have normally done. And then we compound
I understand what you're saying. You see that in a projection, in the sense that they start internalizing this stuff and then projecting it back out.
Yes.
But also this time we have to acknowledge that there's the whole idea of Gurdjieff's solalunius, that the energies of the sun will come on down and fry our brains basically at the emotional level and make us all a little bit irritated and touchy. And I'm certain that that's the case. We're also, by the way, hearing reports of, I've got some friends of mine, people that bought software a long time ago, that kind of thing, and we have association, but they're living in the Caribbean and over in the bulgy part of the Amazon Delta in far northern Brazil. And they're telling me that there's strange stuff coming on with the sun, and people are getting sunburn, radiation poison, really, within a very short time of exposure, and that this is relatively recent in the sense that it's been only these past few weeks that they've been experiencing this. So I think that, to a certain extent, some of the solalunious madness that's out and about there is indeed we need to stop and examine and see if our response at the moment isn't out of proportion. Could it be driven by something external like this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's just another factor to put into all of this.
Yeah, unfortunately, most people won't stop in the middle of their anger and say, oh, it's the sun. It's not really me. That guy really didn't mean to offend me by, speaking Polish in my presence or whatever it was that, set him off.
It could be anything. He wore a blue shirt and it was supposed to be Red Friday. Right. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, really, it can be that kind of a simplistic thing that's happening. Well, and here's my thought, in whether the moon was actually bombed or not. I'm like, I cannot think about how even more ignorant that could be it affects everything. The moon affects our emotions, our tides, and all that, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not quite sure what the real purpose is behind this, but obviously it's certainly not a positive.
Their claim about hunting for water would seem spurious at best.
Yeah,
it's very much like the claim that they lost that Mars observer thing because of a difference where one set of engineers used millimeters and another used inches.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I just don't buy either of these.
No, lots of disinformation.
Yeah.
Lots of disinformation. And speaking of that, when you're doing your reports, Clif, how do you filter out what could be disinformation? What is there some kind of a
basically, it's a real good question. How prone are we to manipulation, and how does that actually achieved? And basically, what we do is we have this hit list of about 300,000 or 400,000 forum chat, not a chat area, but a forum where people would post stuff. And when we get there, then there are these large lists of words that we're seeking. And then what we do is that we pick up the words on either side of it, out 2,048 bytes on either side of the word that we found that is within our list. And when we bring those words back, we bring them back as hexadecimal integers. And then we throw out all the articles and a bunch of other words we just don't care about. So from that point on, from the point that we read them on, most of the work is about throwing words away. So we might get 100 million words and reduce it down to something manageable, say 40 or 50 or 60,000 words that we actually would pour through, maybe 100,000 in an in-depth fashion for a report. So that right there has a tendency to concentrate such that they would have to have huge amounts of the Internet filled with repetitious kinds of word patterns in order to affect our aggregation process. And one of the things that we do is to look for interesting patterns of words that show up, which is actually how we find some of the disinformation stuff out there. And I've thought of a curious business, which would be to sell some of our software off that actually would help people going out and find word patterns like this that indicate that, this fellow over here is linked to that fellow because they're using the same talking points at this particular level of their discourse. And so you could, for instance, root out paid agents. It would be tedious, but maybe kind of fun. It was just a side thought. But basically, we get to get around the idea of being able to be manipulated by working from the archetype downward, and then really, to a certain extent, discounting the details that we get. And when we get the details, they're on the order of an individual word, say,